doing a valve cover gasket on a Honda J Series V6. This will include your 3.0s, 3.2s, 3.5s, 3.7s, your Accords, your Odysseys, Pilots, Ridgelines, your Acura TLs, CLs, RLs, MDXs, any of the Honda or Acura series of vehicles that have the J Series V6. So let's get started. This is going to be a quick flyby. I record this and then I sped it up for you guys so you guys can take in as much information as quickly as possible, because I know we all have the attention span of about 30 seconds. Okay, so the first thing you need to do on the top of the intake manifold is a plate, and you have to take, I think it's 12, 13, 10 millimeter bolts out. And there's 2 nuts as well. So take that thing off. There's a gasket underneath there, so just make sure you keep that gasket. Don't rip that gasket. Okay. Now I'm taking the hose off on the passenger side. You just got to loosen that up. Basically, you just have to go around the whole upper intake and get all the hoses, wiring harness out of the way. So right here, I'm at the back towards the firewall, getting the brake booster off, getting part of the evap system off, and then there's a little clip right there, part of the wiring harness that I just get loose. We're looking at the throttle body. So I'm going to take the air cleaner box off and the snorkel. There's the sensor I took off. A 10 millimeter hose clamp basically holds the snorkel onto the throttle body, so you got to get that loose. And then there's 4 8 millimeter bolts that hold the air filter housing on as well. So I'm actually trying to just take off the throttle body without having to remove the coolant lines from the bottom of it. But in the end, what I found out, somebody had actually RTV'd the throttle body to the upper intake manifold. I take a piece of wood and I smack it real quick, try to get it loose, and then I realized that it's actually glued in there, so I just left it alone. I took the whole thing out. There's 2 coolant lines sitting on the bottom of the throttle body that you have to take off. I actually just went in there and cut them. So right here, I'm slowing it down a little bit so you guys can see. There's an electrical connector that goes into the throttle body that I just took off right there. Just unclip it. Just, push the clip in and then pull it out. Then you have two coolant lines underneath as well. I actually bypassed the throttle body. When I put everything back together, I'll put a link down in the description below where I show you guys how to do that. It really bugs me that coolant flows through the throttle body for some reason, so I usually just bypass the throttle body altogether. I'm pointing towards the coolant lines, and I actually come in here with a pair of dikes and just cut it loose. There's another hose right there that you need to get off, and then there's 2 10 millimeter bolts right there. I didn't show it right there, but you'll see me do it here in a second. So I have the dikes. Go down there, cut the. Actually, I'm up on the top. Just get that hose loose. And then the 2 10 millimeter bolts holding the little evap system on. Get those loose. You're basically wanting to get all the stuff off the upper intake manifold so you can pull it up and out. Okay, now you have, I think it's 14 or 13 12 millimeter bolts that sit in there. There's 2 nuts and then like 12 bolts. They are either 12 or 14. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a torque sequence. I'll put that down. I'll put a picture of it right now. When you guys install it, you have to follow that torque sequence. It's 16 foot-pounds when you put it back in, but you have to follow the torque sequence. So there I'm just pulling up the upper intake manifold, showing you the coolant lines I cut. Like I said, I just bypass that. I don't even put the coolant lines back onto the throttle body when I install it. There is a gasket right there, and just make sure that gasket isn't damaged. You can reuse it. Putting paper towels down in there, because those lead right into the cylinders, right where the valves are. Right here, I'm just getting the coil pack connectors off, and then I'm pulling the coil packs out. You have to do this on both sides, the front and the rear. And then there's part of the wiring harness down on the side of the head, this is still the front, on the side of the head towards the driver's side. There's a bolt that I took out to give me more access so I can move the wiring harness out so I can have clearance for the valve cover. Honda made it so that there's 2 wiring harnesses on the front and the back that actually sit right above the valve cover. And the looser you can get those wiring harnesses, the easier it is to get the valve cover off. So I'm just showing you right there that there is one small tiny little bolt that actually goes at the very top on both sides to hold down the valve cover. The rest are the same length. Now I had a bear of a time trying to get this front cover off and the rear one as well. I just took a piece of wood, smacked it a little bit, and I was able to break it free. The gasket was hardened so much it actually left residue on the head, which is ridiculous. So I'm just pointing there right there. I'm just pointing out right there the residue. I'm getting the oil off. This thing had been leaking for quite a while. It was all the way down the front of the engine. So I just get a razor blade, brand new sharp razor blade, go at an angle and just scrape the old valve cover gasket off the head right there. Just be careful. Don't cut your finger with the razor blade or any sharp aluminum, because those heads are made out of aluminum and they are very sharp. So right here I'm working on the back head, the one towards the firewall, getting the hoses off. There's 5 10mm bolts that actually hold the valve cover on. Everything on this vehicle all the hoses are hard and brittle, so it made it a little bit more difficult to get the valve covers off. And I'll also put links down below to some of the other videos I've done for these valve covers. Like I said, I'm just doing a flyby for you guys and narrating it. I'm just showing right there that I got that hose off on the driver's side. Now I have to tackle the same thing. You actually have that bolt that I'm pointing to holds the bracket that goes to the high pressure power steering hose that you have to loosen up and get out of the way. And then do the same thing. You have to disconnect all the connectors for the coil packs and then get the coil packs up and out of the way. You do not have to remove the spark plugs to do this job. So I have my Chemo 3/8 electric ratchet. I love that thing. Put a link down in the description below where you guys can pick it up on Amazon. I highly, highly recommend it if you're working on cars a lot. So right here, once again, I'm trying to loosen up the wiring harness as much as possible. There's a grounding wire held on by a 10mm bolt that I'm pointing out right there. So I'll take that out, and then I just put the bolt back in where I got it from so I don't lose it. And there's 2 10mm bolts that hold the wiring harness. There's like a hard plastic that the wiring harness is encased in. And there's 2 10mm bolts that hold that plastic down. You got to take those off as well. Give you more room. And then one of the wiring harnesses actually runs on the passenger side, near the top of the rear timing belt cover. And if you take that out, you'll see it when you get in there. There's a little slot that the wiring harness actually resides in, that sits right on top of the rear timing belt cover. And if you pop that harness out of where it's trapped into, it'll give you a little bit more room when you need to pull the valve cover off and get the harness out of the way. So there you guys go. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later.